And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Erik Luhrs, Erik, first of all, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you are welcome. It's always good to connect. And Erik and I have been building this relationship over the last few months, and I'm not even sure where we met, probably some podcasting thing, or I don't know, but you just run across people once in a while and you're like, I kind of like him and I like what he does. And so I wanted to have you here today, Erik, because you really help business owners break through what I call limiting beliefs that for so many years have really held me back. But I want to talk about that. But before we get there, give us a snapshot of who you are and how in the world did you get to do what you're doing today?
Oh, how long is your podcast?
Snapshot, okay? Reader's Digest.
Wow. Okay. Basically, I work with business owners. Okay. And I help them expand their business. Now, I do this through expanding what they would call their beingness and the beingness of their team and the beingness of the business. And beingness is who you're being in the moment, right? Woody Allen said, 80% of success is showing up. I say maybe, but the other 20% is sure as hell who shows up. So it's about expanding your beingness and becoming the version of you that achieves what you want first. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 everything that you want shows up, as opposed to how do I achieve it? How do I stay small but achieve all the big things? That doesn't happen.
Right.
You know? The mouse doesn't get what the lion share. The lion gets the lion share.
That's right.
So I helped them transform through that way. The way that I got here was, basically a mixed bag of a life. Normal kid, doing my things, a little bit of a psychic thing when I was very young. And then when I got older, getting into energy healing, martial arts, but also business development. I was in corporate America for 10 years. I've managed teams of 120 plus people. I've achieved mathematically impossible results for clients when I was working in the private sector, and then as a consultant and strategist outside the private sector. Studied NLP, became fascinated in the subconscious mind, developed the Guru selling system, subconscious lead generation, fearless positioning, and ultimately realized that my miracle clients, and to date, my best is still taking a pipeline from 150,000 to 10 million in 8 weeks. No, do not ask me to do it again.
That's quite growth. Yeah. Wow.
Can you do it one more time? Yes. But that kind of magic for years, I attributed it to being really good at figuring out marketing and positioning and whatever. The truth of the matter was that the magic came from the client transforming and expanding their beingness on a massive scale. And now I understand that that's the magic. That's what I do.
I love that. All right, so let's just dive into the magic, because you're right. So many times it's the business owner's mind that is that limiting factor, because they are chasing something that they're, in a sense, shall I say, not ready for. Would that be appropriate? They're not being true to themselves in the moment, and that can hinder us from getting to where we think we want to go. Is that fair?
It's fair. I guess a more specific explanation would be that Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens to a lot of people is they're at, let's say, $100,000 version of themselves. And they say, I want to be at $1 million version of myself. And now, early on in my career, I took people very quickly, tripled their income in a matter of 2 months and stuff. And you would think, okay, everything would be great, right? So they went, they bought new stuff, they hired more people, whatever. And all of a sudden, they would self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. And it would be boom, 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 boom. Well, what do well, I'm not making the calls as I'm supposed to. I'm not this. And I stopped doing well, why? I don't know. And what happened was, looking back, was that those people, they hadn't become a version of themselves that was comfortable even expecting $1 million.
Yeah.
They were actually still $100,000 version of themselves, waiting for the floor to drop back down.
Yeah.
And so rather than like, oh, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? They just said, screw it, subconsciously, and brought themselves back down to the 100,000 level. And all of a sudden, like, boom, they come back down to 100,000. All of a sudden, no problems. They went right back to doing what they knew how to do.
Yeah.
And so when you're at 100,000, you say, okay, I want to go to 1 million or anything. People show up, like when they show up to me, and they say, what do I do? And from Stephen Covey came up with the construct of be, do, have from his book, The Habits of Highly Successful People. And he realized that who you're being determines what you are capable of doing, and then that determines what your results are. That's why I call what I do now be, do, scale. But I realized that it was more like a mathematical formula. It's actually be times do equals have, or be times do equals scale. So, but the problem is that when people show up, always first, what do I do? How do I make $1 million? What do I do to make $1 million? What do I do to get more leads? What do I do to get more sales? What do I do to hold on to more of my staff? Or what do I do to attract better staff or more staff or whatever, better team? And that means if you look at the mathematical equation, be times do equals have, they're eliminating be. And they're just saying, okay, I'm just want to look at the equation as do equals have. Now, do equals have comes right back down to basically manual labor. So it's how many hours can I put in?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you say, okay, I doubled from 100,000 to 200,000 this year, but I went from 40 to 80 hours.
That's right. Yeah.
But I doubled my revenue. I haven't seen my family in 6 weeks. I'm pretty sure my wife left me 3 weeks ago, but I doubled my revenue. Ooh-ah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I wish I could take them on vacation.
Well, yeah. Well, but pause right there, because that's what so many business owners chase. I saw a guy on Facebook the other day with his, awards from getting some, big revenue thing from some company, but it never tells us the rest of the story.
Yes.
Interesting. That's great.
Yeah, no. Now, and that's the thing is if you don't change yourself, many years ago, my first mentor, Harv Eker, said, it's changing your money thermostat. You can have a room set to 30 degrees, and then you can bring in a heater, plug it in, heat up the room to 80, unplug the heater and take it back out. Temperature is going to go back down.
Yep.
You have to set the thermostat to hold that 80 degrees. And that's the key piece. And so, and it's funny because B is actually the in terms of leverage, it's unlimited, because your beingness can just keep expanding and expanding and expanding. And how do I put this? I have a sort of a morphed psychic thing now when I work with my clients, in that when I work with clients, I can pick up on their higher self. And their higher self is always giving me ideas. So when you ask a question, your higher self is actually always answering it. And it's always giving you ideas, and it's always trying to point you in the right direction. It's just we're trained not to hear it. So I have this kind of thing, I can kind of pick up on it, and that funnels through me along with strategies or something like that. But when I'm sort of picking up on people's higher self, like it just can go like this, which means your beingness, because you're always reaching higher and higher, trying to get to your highest self, it's unlimited. So your beingness can expand unlimited. And the bigger your beingness, the less you actually have to do. And as your beingness gets bigger, and again, everything is energy in the universe, you're basically, I can go into quantum physics, but at the end of the day, we all know we're all made up of atoms, right? Atoms are energy. And actually, protons, neutrons, and electrons actually waft in and out of existence. And science has proven this. They're not solid little tiny dots floating around smacking into each other or whatever. They're actually little blips of energy that come in and out of existence as needed, just to hold something together that we then perceive as a physical object. So when you are raising your beingness, you're increasing your energy. When you're increasing your energy, all of a sudden you're, for lack of a better term, broadcasting on a much higher frequency. And what you do and what you want and what you love and your passion and your energy, boom, 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 it's going out, out, out. And serendipity, synchronicity, luck just start happening. I've had numerous clients say, okay, it was funny, I was talking to one just this couple of days ago, and she had been procrastinating. And I said, on this one client, I said, send them an email, because it was a client that had been stringing them along for months.
Right.
We want to, but they never got started on anything. And she said, we haven't heard from them in a while. I said, send them an email saying, look, obviously we're not your top burner priority, and also they were competing against like 2 other companies.
Okay.
Said, send them this email just that says, we know we know this is not your top priority thing right now. So let us know. We'll stop following up with you when you're ready to actually tackle this situation. Let us know. She said, I procrastinated. I thought about it. No. She said, finally, after 2 weeks, I finally sat down at the computer. The moment I sat down at the computer to write the email, my phone rang, and it was them saying, okay, I'm ready to go. Yes, because you were broadcasting, getting ready to do it. And as soon as you sat down, like you sent out one final, and somebody over there got it and said, and it just became a priority. And this is the kind of stuff that happens all the time as you increase your beingness. So, you don't even have to, at some point in time, you don't even have to do anything.
Well, no, and that's so true, because we go back to people we all know, right? You got Tony Robbins, you got Sue Zorman, you got Dave Ramsey, all these guys on this platform way up here. Yeah. You go back 30, 35 years, they were on a much smaller platform, and they had to work on their B, right? Because you look at Tony Robbins, he hasn't changed his message really in 30 or 40 years, but his being has changed and grown.
Yes.
And so too many times we look at somebody like that and go, well, I could never be that. Well, no, that's not true, but you have to start where you are and be comfortable in your own shoes, and then believe that you can go to that next level. And it may not be going from 100,000 to 1 million. It might be going from 100,000 to 250,000.
Right.
Okay. Can I believe that? Okay. Let's take that step first, right? Is that what you find with business owners as you work with them, that stair-stepping thing? Or how do people get that breakthrough to go, oh, there it is?
Well, so again, coming back to the construct of that, this entire universe is energy or vibration. It's really a vibrational shift in the person. So we would language it as belief or whatever. So various languages use different words to describe kind of the same thing. I feel this, or I believe this, etc. Yeah. Language is, I can go on for hours about how language is designed to be limiting, but that's a completely different conversation.
There you go.
But when you feel inside yourself that I am this person now, that's when everything shifts.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people visualization doesn't actually work, because a lot of times, most people, when they're visualizing themselves like they're looking at somebody on a television screen.
Yeah.
So you can watch television all day long. That doesn't make you Brad Pitt or whatever. You could watch Ocean's 11 all day long.
There you go. That's right. Yeah.
We all might want to, but we can't. But when you have an experience where you feel, and that's why the top, I've studied the top change experts in the world, and successful people, and Buddhist monks, and all this stuff. When you feel like that person, then all of a sudden you're vibrating at that level, and that's what sends the signal out to the universe. So that's why mantras don't work, because you say, I'm a billionaire.
Right.
No, you're not.
Right. Yeah, go look at your bank account.
No, you're not. No, you're not. That little voice in your head is always like I want to be a millionaire. I'm going to visualize myself standing in front of my beach house, yada yada. Okay, how are you going to get there?
Yep.
Like, that's always the thing. So the process that I use with my clients is that I call it feel it forward, and I actually get them to a state where they can, working from the heart and working to learn how to reteaching them how to feel their body. When you're a baby, you don't really think. You're all feeling, you're all emotion. It's all like one big bundle of discovery. It's only as you get older and you're your mind, I shouldn't say that, your brain, your critical thinking, as they call it, kicks in around the age of 5 or 6. Then you go from heart-based to brain-based. You go from body-based to brain-based. And then you learn from there. And then it just comes to the kind of thing. So I take them back into their body, and that itself is like, it's literally learning how to walk again.
I bet.
And then when you can go from your body and you can actually feel into the future, not visualize, not try to say, this is the plan or anything, but actually bring yourself in terms of feelings and only feelings into the future, and feel a moment, let's say it's a year from now, but you feel a moment and you feel like, you start getting away from dollar amount. It's just like,
Right.
feel financially abundant. What would be some, I'd feel myself on a beach. Okay, I feel myself in front of or standing in the middle of a really wonderful house. Don't tell me what the house looks like, just feel the house. And all of a sudden, and the house starts to rise up. And almost every client I work with, when we do this process, they say the house that I imagined from this is completely different than the house I was picturing. The money amount was, the way money came in was different. Yeah. And all of a sudden from there, is actually where the new positioning ideas, the raw ideas for positioning come from, the raw ideas for new lead gen comes from, the new ideas for different audiences, for different offerings. It all comes from this because they're no longer constricted by the brain.
Right.
So when you get there, all of a sudden it's just like, and then they wake up in that state, and they're kind of reverse engineering their success because they already are that person. So now they're expecting it.
Right.
And boom, 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 it starts showing up on cue.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I hope people are listening, go back and re-listen to what he just did, because that it's so spot on. It brought me back to when I read Tony Robbins' first book, Unlimited Power, 30 years ago, right? He talked about the concept of anchoring, but he did it with a feeling, not mental.
Right.
And he'd anchor, and I thought, oh, there's a connection there somewhere, but and I love what you said about getting rid of the dollar amount. It's putting yourself in the state. So part of what I've done in this vein kind of is, I'm a big giver financially, to ministries and different things. And so I've got this big vision to pay for the translation of the Bible in some language, or that's my dream. Well, I started by supporting an organization that's translating Bibles now at like, $50 a month. Okay, great. But I'm starting to see myself as part of that Bible translation. So my being is changing already. And the more I do it, the more generous I can be, the faster I'm going to realize that, right? So it's the feeling of going, that's cool. I'm already there. Now I've just got to pull everything together, or it's come. So anyway, I don't know why I told you that, but it's just fascinating, because I think for me, my mind I've allowed it to limit me. And what you're talking about is using the body, the emotions and everything to be who you are and who you want to be.
Right.
Is that right?
Well, to be who to feel the version of yourself that you truly want to be.
Yeah.
Truly desire to be. And moving into that state and then staying there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, because when you're there, like you said, I'm not worrying about dollar amounts. That's not, many times as I've talked with successful people, that's not the driving force anymore. Yeah, we all need money to do things, but money in and of itself just is kind of, if that's all you have, it's kind of unfulfilling. What are you doing with it? Right? That's the emotions. It's like the money is the logical aspect, the check and balance or whatever, but it's the emotions that bring it to go, I can be successful earning $50,000 a year or $5 million. It doesn't matter. It's the being, right? Am I on track?
Yeah, it's the being. And so even more so when you say, okay, like you're worth $100 million. You say, okay, I'm going to give 50 million to charity. Now, the thing is, if you give it because you're like, I feel this, magnanimous, urge inside of me to give it, then that's one thing. But a lot of times we're giving it because we're trying to gain a feeling of like, I want to, I made so much money, I want to feel like a human being again. So I'm giving this money away.
Yeah.
But you don't feel connected because you're like, okay, I'm giving it. I'm waiting for the money to go out and somehow my ROI on giving this money away is going to be this feeling. But all you feel is, okay, I gave money away. You don't feel like a connection to it until you go and say, okay, the day that they say, we would like you to come on in to the food bank or to the soup kitchen, and then as you go there and they're like, these people are eating because of you today,
right?
And you see like a small child, skinny and like, eating a muffin or something, and you're like all of a sudden it's like,
It's connected.
Now you're connected. Now you have that feeling.
Yeah.
But ahead of time, if you can feel that same feeling, you'll get the ability to give the money faster, because the money will show up because the universe hates a vacuum. You create, when you move forward energetically and you create and say, okay, this is my expectation, and there's a gap between where you are and where you expect to be. The universe, there's this gap. The universe hates a vacuum. So it's going to, and it's going to close that gap as fast as possible.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are some simple steps that somebody listening to this, if they find themselves in the do aspect, what are some simple steps they can start taking to understand more about B, number one, then number two, how do they get a hold of you? What help can you provide to somebody? So what could they do on their themselves, and then how can you help people?
Well, I always like to say that starting out, I always like to recommend like a morning routine to people, meditation of some form to start getting you to the point where you can quiet your mind, and better if you can start connecting with your heart. And so if you can just sit for 5 or 10 minutes to start and say, okay, I'm going to just feel my physical heart. That's all I'm going to do. And learning how to get away from, because what happens is you go, okay, and you think about your heart, and your brain takes you right back over. It's like, okay, we're concentrating on the heart. Like, no, you're not. You're thinking about your heart, and just like feel the heart, feel the heart, thought. And that's like, when you can start learning that, then all of a sudden, once you've gotten that understanding that there are thoughts and there are feelings, like my body sensations and this energy and this yama, 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 then you start to say, okay, I actually am 2 different pieces. There's this physical brain that's all it is a record player of the past, burping up various things to try and get your attention back to it immediately. And as soon as you start getting into your heart, and then all of a sudden your sweetheart from 3rd grade pops into your head. I haven't thought about her in 40 years. Like, Sally. Like, wait a minute. Why the hell am I thinking about Sally? Because your brain's trying to get your attention. It's like, look at me. Don't look at that. Look at me. But when you can get that, all of a sudden it's like, okay. And you can start to like, and just that alone. And so taking time in the morning to start really teaching yourself that step 1 is to learn how to quiet the mind, and step 2, how to disconnect. And then, physical activity or something like that gets you warmed up. But if you find yourself like going at do and saying, okay, and there's nothing wrong with doing as long as you're being at that level.
Yes. Yeah.
The problem is if you're doing and you say, I keep doing all these things, I'm not achieving these things that I desire. That's when you know. But if you're doing and achieving and doing and achieving and it feels good, then you're at that level. You're okay with that movement. It's when you do and it don't bang, boom, boom, boom. And no matter what you try, you can't seem to move that needle. That's when you have to really start saying, okay, it's time to work on my beingness instead of my doingness. To that end, one of the things that I like to do is offer people what I call a 1-question power session. And so what that is half an hour, 45 minutes with me. And what I do is what I believe is that a lot of people, we have all of these questions in our lives. We have all of these issues and problems and whatever. Right? I have to figure out this in my business, figure out that in my business, and that, boom, 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 boom. But in actuality, they're like dominoes. But if you don't put the dominoes in order, then they just all float around, right? Chasing this domino for this hour and this domino for half an hour. And so the 1-question power session, I sit down with people, and because again, I'm partly psychic, I channel their higher self as I'm working with them. And I get them to the point where they can figure out what's the one question. If they answer that question, the rest of the dominoes will line up, bing, and the rest will fall. And so I offer that. That's complimentary to anybody who wants to take me up on it. You can go to Erik Luhrs, www.erikluhrs.com/power. So ERIKLUHRS.com/power. There's a little video there, explains all about the session. You can just sign up right there, and you and I will talk. We'll bring your higher self in. We'll get a little strategy going, a little higher self-talk going. We'll get you lined up and figure out what that one problem, if you can figure out what that one question is and answer that one question and solve that problem, you start the dominoes falling for everything you want after that.
That's awesome. I'm going to make sure we capture that in the show notes, erikluhrs.com/power.
Yeah, www. Make sure you put that in.
Oh, that's right. That's
you have
right.
some issues once in a while. People don't put the
okay. www. And it's interesting because I read a book, 5 or 6 years ago. I've read it multiple times now. It's called The One Thing is the book. And it talks about in business that same concept exactly. We got so many things to do. You boil it down to what's the first thing, what's the lead domino in your series of dominoes, what you just said. It has been transforming when I do that just in tasks list, or I've got so many things to do. What's the one thing that I should be focusing on now? That 80-20 rule, right? You help people do that in a different way, but it's cool because I'm reading a book to do it. You can do it with Erik on the phone for an hour or whatever it was, and really get some breakthrough, because I'm convinced that 95% of our issues are between our ears. It's the mindset, it's who we are, it's our being, as you've talked about. So let me encourage you to go to www.erikluhrs, that's LUHRS, erikluhrs.com/power, and sign up for one of those. It's complimentary. He will rock your world and really help you line up and get alignment. I guess that's the word that came to me, is alignment with who you are, right?
Yep.
So, Erik, thanks for being my guest. Thanks for expanding our minds a little bit and helping us understand that really getting to that next level is not always about doing. Many times it's about being first, then the doing. And as you said, be times do equals scale. And I mean, that's what everybody says. I want to scale my business. Well, let's work on be first, and it's going to scale a lot faster, right?
There you go.
Awesome. Erik, thank you so much for the time, buddy. I look forward to staying in touch, and hopefully people will reach out and schedule one of those calls with you.
Thank you.